There's really good, big, strong plants here. Big leaves, healthy plants, holding on to quite a lot of the older leaves really. Always what you want in a rape crop this time of the year is to have volume and height. Now today it's lying down there because the frost is making it lying down. But if there wasn't frost on those leaves, they tend to be kind of want to stand up like that. And height's important because, as well as the volume, it's one of the major deterrents for trying to keep pigeons out later in the winter. Because when the pigeons get hungry, they come in and they want to graze anything and everything they can. And having a lot of leaf and tall leaf where water will sit in here and point to the leaf, the pigeons don't like going in there because they don't like having to flap that down and get water onto the underside of their wings. So that's why height's important. In every other respect, this crop looks very clean. While that leaf is effectively dying, it still is uniformly yellow and dying kind of naturally. There's no great signs of any major disease having been anywhere in there in the plant. Nor is there sign in what I've seen so far of any of this leaf miner, which was about earlier in the year, earlier in the autumn that is. These leaves are dying back. They're basically dying back to feed new growth as is natural for the plant to do. But they still have, they're not being killed. I think that's the most important thing to make. They're just dying naturally. But there's so much vegetation, green vegetation in here and this, that I'd certainly think that it's possibly a place that is either sown into a very fertile field to begin with, or there could be chicken litter or some other organic manures gone under this, because it's holding very solid so much of this lovely green leaf. And you know, there's no foam visible there, there's no leaf spot visible there, so that crop kind of looks like to be very well set up for spring growth, etc. So it's kind of where you'd like a crop. Good, strong looking, and a lovely shade of green that's there to drive growth. Little bit of grazing done on some of the leaves, that could be a bit of damage, or it could be that pigeons were in here earlier taking a look around, but I would say not. The new leaves coming through here also lovely and green and clean and solid, healthy looking, which is the most important thing to be able to say about a crop for now. So all in all, looking good there, and kind of set up. That crop might still get a bit of pigeon grazing over the winter. I don't think it will necessarily, in that it's reasonably well set up to prevent it. But you know, pigeons get hungry, they're going to get hungry, and they're going to come at you regardless. But whether or which, there's certainly a good strong plant there in the ground, and having a strong plant is important. See, there's a good strong resistance. I know the ground is frozen, but there's a good strong, oh, she broke. Well, obviously a very strong resistance to pulling the plant out of the ground, which is really what you want. And while the root didn't come fully up, I probably can show something on this. The thickness of the root is approximately the thickness there of that part of the stem where it broke. It's probably 6, 7, 8 millimeters across. And while it's not something that we use in this country, but the Germans put a lot of emphasis in preparing crops for the winter and saying that the top of the root should be roughly that size coming into winter, about 0.8 of a mil, 0.8 of a centimetre or 8 mil across. Because that is indicative of the fact that a lot of growth has taken place already, and that there's reserves in the plant to drive spring growth, whether pigeons graze it or not. So this is very much a good measure for people to be setting for themselves, to work their whole husbandry to have the top of the root roughly that thickness coming into the winter at the end of growth. A good thing to be going on with. Other than that, there's kind of no major issues here. Thankfully, no disease, as I said earlier. We wouldn't expect any major pests coming in at this stage other than the pigeons. Rabbits don't tend to go near it, but they will certainly graze off rape earlier in the season, and if they got ahead of the rape, maybe they'll stay on it. But that crop, I would have said now, is well set up for whatever's going to happen here afterwards, hopefully. Just looking around before we leave the field, I can see lots of straw and stubble on the surface of the ground, and it's kind of, it would beg the question that it's at least possible that crop was sown in some way other than with ploughing. Some form of min-till, most likely. Maybe there's too much disturbance for it to be no-till. So probably some form of min-till rather than actual ploughing, etc. And of course, having any and all of this straw here on the surface is potential feed for earthworms, trying to keep the whole soil condition good. And we know that the rape itself is a very good crop to break open the ground. The roots get a very strong grip, taproot and then strong laterals, get a good strong grip there in the ground, and they do plenty bursting up on it. And that's why we'd always recommend that following a rape crop, it's better if you don't plough, because all of that texture and cultivation is there to begin with, and it doesn't make a lot of sense to bury it if it can be avoided. This particular crop of rape we're in here is obviously not amongst the early crops that were planted. It's a crop that's kind of barely getting on top of the ground. It's full, it's clean in nearly every way, and it's a very frosty morning, so it's not always easy to see what you want to see or show. But you know, that type of crop there, where it's low to the ground, not a big mass of vegetation in it, that's going to be very attractive to pigeons if they start getting hungry later in the winter, because they can land down into it. There's nothing keeping them away, and they'll come in and they're going to graze that. You kind of know it's going to graze. So either you make a very conscious decision to put up all kinds of defences to keep them out, or you concede that it's going to happen. Now, in looking at this particular crop as well, I can see, just having walked into it, that there's a number of the younger leaves here that are discoloured, and I'm going to guess that there's some form of herbicide gone on here recently that has caused that. Not so easy to see it very clearly with so much frost about, but nonetheless it's there. You can kind of see that yellow venation that's in the leaf. You can just about see the veins, and it's almost totally yellow. It shouldn't be like that, but that's the way it is, and I'm pretty sure it'll grow out of it. There's no major problem or risk or anything like that. So, you know, you look at leaves then like this one, where you have multicolours on the one leaf, and you kind of wonder, well, is that a deficiency of this? Is it a deficiency of that and the other? And of course, those symptoms in a growing leaf would certainly be symptoms of things like manganese and magnesium. But in the month of December, in a crop that's now in the ground probably at least since early September, it's much more likely to be a leaf that's just dying off. And in the main, plants will kill older leaves in order to move the major nutrients in particular up to feed new growth. And that's just the natural order of things. That's what happens, how it happens, and why it happens. So this particular leaf that we started with, it's probably just a dying leaf rather than any particular problem. Looking around at some leaves that are kind of don't have frost on them at the moment, I see no signs of any disease in here, be it foma or light leaf spot. So hopefully those particular ones won't be causing this crop a problem. But of course they could be a problem, and probably are a problem in many of the very early sown crops that have been in the ground since the middle of August or thereabouts. They'll always turn 40 shades of every colour as they're dying off. You can see purples coming onto it, semi-reds, yellows, dark greens, light greens, all part of a natural process of the leaf just dying to feed its younger brothers and sisters, really. That's what it comes down to. Okay, while there weren't very many weeds in this crop, you'll always come across areas where you will find some, and we can see bits of what probably is a poppy coming through, and they're becoming a bigger problem in the rape crop. I can see different grasses also coming through. There's probably an odd volunteer cereal somewhere, but if there was many of them, particularly if there were volunteer cereals, I think you'd be trying still to take them out. Bit of chickweed surviving there, but it's still, to me, fairly obvious that this crop has had quite a bit of, or has had some herbicide, because of the symptoms on the leaf, but also because the ground is relatively clean towards what any August or September sown crop would be if it got nothing at all. The other thing that you'd be watching for is that rape will normally follow some of the cereals, and you could get a lot of volunteer cereal coming up in it. That would be a problem if it was left, because it just means you can move disease from this crop to other cereal crops next door if it's left untreated. So generally we like to take them out, and particularly things like wild oats. You'd be using a graminicide in the springtime, or sometime still over winter possibly, just to take out all of those grass weeds.